Well, hello again, guys, from here at the Milburn Stand Steps outside St James's Park. The naughty steps. Where's Alexander Isak? Yeah, I think he's going to be staying on that step for the foreseeable future while he remains a Newcastle player. But will he remain a Newcastle player? Another 24, 48 hours worth of debate in that regard. Some new quotes from Eddie Howe on the subject as I light up my laptop there because I want to be true to what Eddie said. And I dare say there'll be another 24 and 48 hours worth of debate and reporting after this. Now, there is some good news, guys, and I'm going to split this video into two parts. I'm going to address what Eddie's just said on Alexander Isak and my latest understanding of the situation here from the Keegan steps. That feels apt. And then I'm going to take a little walk, probably towards the Trent, when I'll talk about the football. Yeah, the football match that happened behind us there. There's a lot to take from that. But again, there's three little bits of good news I'm going to address after Isak as well. Two with regards to transfers and one with regards an injury, or certainly an injury scare. So stay tuned in for that because good news, guys, it's been in scarce supply in these parts this summer, hasn't it? And on the pitch, a turbulent summer, well, probably to be expected. It's signed off with a sixth match without a win, a fourth defeat, 2-0 defeat by Atletico Madrid. Let's get that right. He'd be quick to pull me up on it. And they were very good. They were excellent. They made 11 changes in the second half there and arguably got even stronger. But more on the football when we take a wander. First of all, Alexander Isak and the very latest, and for me, the most key telling quote from all of this, and it's what I've led my reflections on in tomorrow's Mail on Sunday, was for the first time for me, a public indication or admission from Eddie Howe that he would potentially be open to selling Isak. Now, I have said all summer, there was a journalist who broke the story. I was out there in Korea, in Singapore. I've been exposed to lots of this, on the record, off the record, inside the club, outside the club. I feel Isak information overload, and from all of overload, put it into the Craig Hope supercomputer, and what comes back out? Well, my feeling with all of that information is still that if the terms were right for the football club, they would explore a sale. Now, a lot of you guys have asked me today, there's been reports elsewhere that Isak has been told that he can't go, that he's staying, that the move to Liverpool has been blocked. Now, Eddie was asked about that tonight. He said he wasn't aware of that. He's not party to all conversations, but he had no knowledge of that. What I will say is that no journalist writes a story without it being sourced, without them writing it in goodwill and good faith. And is Alexander Isak for sale? If you ask your contacts, your sources, if I went to them and said, is Isak for sale? Well, the answer would come back, no, he's not for sale. But by extension of that, I think a different question is, will he be sold? Is he for sale? No. Will he be sold? Let's wait and see. And Eddie said there tonight that all options are still open, everything is still at play. Can Alexander Isak potentially be a Newcastle player on September the 1st? Yes, he can, and that would come about one of three ways. Either Liverpool don't come back to the table, for whatever reason, don't come back with the money, in which case there's no deal to be had. Newcastle fail to sign the replacements. Those replacements they are quite fervently going after, as we've seen evidenced by the handful, half a dozen rejections they've had. If they don't get the strikers in, Isak won't go. The third option is, and this is scenario A for Newcastle, that the owners and Eddie Howe, that they do persuade him to stay. Now, Eddie was asked about that tonight, and he said, well, if it was that easy, I would have done it yesterday, I'll do it tomorrow. It's not easy persuading him to stay. So yeah, that is scenario A, absolutely. I think that would be scenario A for you guys, that Alexander Isak, having communicated to the club and to Eddie Howe that he wants to go, he has a change of heart. Of course they've tried that. They've tried that with narrative, with numbers, with money, with all sorts. But he is adamant. He wants to go. As I touched on before there, for the first time tonight, I think Eddie Howe given an indication that he would be potentially open to that sale. I'll read the quote here to you. I think everything is at play, Isak stays or goes, because he is contracted to us. He's our player. The club basically make the decision on his future. I don't know what that will be. Of course, I have a preferred outcome. I want the best and strongest squad possible. But also, I want players that really want to play for this football club. And it was that line. Because Alexander Isak has made it clear he doesn't want to play for the football club. That is why he is currently in exile. I actually asked Eddie Howe to revisit his quotes from last night as to whether Isak had refused to train and play, or was it his decision? Eddie said, well, I thought I made that clear last night. I said, Eddie, we're not very bright. We spent 10 minutes debating it. He said, well, I thought I made it clear, so I'm not going to go back over it. He said, my wish is that I want him to train and play, but that's got to be right for both parties, and didn't go any further with that. So we're not really much clearer. And again, we stood and debated that for 10 minutes afterwards. And I think what we can draw from that is quite clearly right now, Alexander Isak's stance, and based on his behaviour and his conduct previously, pulling out of the tour, then going to San Sebastian, and everything he said to Howe and the club after they returned from the Far East makes it impossible for him to be around the group. I think that would be it's a strong word, a real toxic presence to have Isak plonked into the middle of that squad now. So whether he's refused, whether that's semantics, the player has made it clear by his conduct and by his words that he can't be part of that. Now again, as it stands, my information, my feeling on the back of that is that the sale of Alexander Isak, some of those on the inside are open to that again, if the terms are right for the football club. I've been consistent with this message for the best part of 2 or 3 weeks now. Now, do they want that to be the case? No, they don't. Alexander Isak is the best striker they could possibly have going into next season. I think all of those replacements looked at and explored don't get close to Isak. But they do get close to Isak, and they go beyond Alexander Isak if he doesn't want to be here. And that is everything they're considering and they're weighing up on the inside. Now, what will eventually play out come September the 1st, to go back to what Eddie said, everything is still on the table. So we've spoken enough about this already, guys. I don't think it's actually moved massively on in the past 24 hours. We are where we were. But what needs to happen, the next domino to fall, is for Newcastle to get that replacement or replacements in. What do we know with regards to that? Well, Brentford's Yoane Wissa is the one. Again, you're probably sick of me saying this now. We've been expecting movement on this for several days. But again, the information is that Brentford's pursuit of Dango Autara at Bournemouth, club-to-club discussions are ongoing today. If that moves, Wissa will come to Newcastle. I've got absolutely no doubt about that. A little update here, a quick update and insert on the striker Samu at FC Porto. Now, again, information into me today. Newcastle and other Premier League clubs have reached out and made those informal inquiries as to his availability and what it would cost. But what I'm told is the number coming back to Newcastle, I think Aston Villa was mentioned as well, is around £80 million. On the back of that, I'm told that number, that would be prohibitive for Newcastle. They aren't doing a deal at £80 million. So that right now, even though the question has been asked, Samu isn't one who is necessarily on the list or they are actively pursuing. That, for now, is Yoane Wissa. And then, as I discussed last night, they will look elsewhere, be it another one, be it a Larson, a Jackson, a Watkins, a Muniz, or another name most likely we haven't heard of. But the strikers are being pursued. And what does that tell you? It tells you they probably are still planning for the eventuality, if you like, of Alexander Isak going. But it would need Liverpool to come back with the money, and it would need those players through the door. But right now, as we stand here, and we are going to move on from this, all outcomes are still on the table. What was that good news I spoke about? Well, yeah, one bit was that Wissa again seems to be inching along. Feels like it's been inching. It's been 3 or 4 weeks now we've been talking about this deal. The second bit of good news on the incoming front, Malick Thiaw, the Milan defender. We understand that deal for around £34.3 million has been agreed in principle. He's flying to London tonight with the Milan squad. They've got a friend against Chelsea tomorrow, but he is expected on Tyneside in the next 24 hours. And that's a good, optics-wise, that's just a good signal of intent to supporters, to players already here, to potential new signings as well, to get the player through the door after, what is it now, three and a half weeks since Anthony Elanga. That's big. Don't underestimate it, even though it's not the priority position they're chasing right now, and it is a defender who will probably come in and not start. Malick Thiaw, I think they look at him, 24-year-old, Fabian Schär, 34-year-old, is that long-term, be it going forward this season or into next season, is the successor for Schär. But nonetheless, it's a player they've watched for a while now. They do like him, of course they like him, that's why they've gone after him, and it looks as if he will be coming in now, finally, another addition. Now what does that mean? It means Newcastle can box off that one position and we can finally stop talking about Mark Guéhi, which I think everyone agree be quite relieved about. But anyhow, it was put to him there, just inside the press room, that the priority's got to be elsewhere, and supporters will be coming out of the summer concerned about the absence of a goal scorer in the team, something we'll get onto when we start walking. And Eddie said, I think in the pre-season games, that would be a fair assessment. I would agree with that. I don't think I'm thinking any different. But we can still win football matches. We need to turn the margins and the little things in our favour. That's my job as the coach, to get more goals into the team, to find a way to win. Now for me, and I'll explore this when we do talk football, I think they're only going to do that by way of signings. In the short term, they've got to do it by way of a front three of Harvey Barnes, Anthony Elanga and Anthony Gordon. And that was the other bit of good news to come out of tonight, because when Anthony Gordon limped off there, guys, 5 or 10 minutes from the end, it looked as if Newcastle were going to be robbed of the centre forward they're going to use going into the start of this season next weekend down at Aston Villa. And wow, wouldn't that have just been the cherry on the cake this pre-season? Now, the good news, Eddie said, was it's not the muscle injury they first thought. It's an ankle problem, but it just looks like a little twist. He's gone over on it, and he thinks, quoting Eddie, he will be okay. Now, if he is okay, that will mean the front three of, as we saw today, Elanga, Barnes and Gordon. And how did they do? Okay, let's walk and talk. Okay, guys, let's have that wonder as promised, and we might just end up in one of Tynesyde's best pubs. Yeah, let's see where we go. But the football there today, and I want to start with a player who I feel sorry for, and I'm a little bit concerned about going into the new season, and that's Anthony Elanga. But stick with me for the reasons, not for his own performance. I thought that was real promise there today. On 2 or 3 occasions, he knocked the ball by his man and just burnt away from him. That change of pace, we've seen pace up here with Anthony Gordon. I don't think we've seen Elanga type pace. Who has? Quite breathtaking to watch at times. But then, on the back of that, there was conversations in the press box, which I was involved in, where some of my colleagues said, well, there's no end product. What's actually come from it? And today, well, no, there was no end product. But my response to that is, well, I've got sympathy for him and I'm concerned for him, because there's no one there to make end product. Is that the right phrase? To make product of what he's producing, of what he's putting on a plate, potentially. Now look at Jacob Murphy last year. Jacob Murphy was feeding the ball into areas where he had Alexander Isak, who got it and put it in the back of the net. Murphy was brilliant last year. I'm taking nothing away from him, but he had the guy at the end of the supply line to turn those crosses, those flicks, those passes into goals. Anthony Elanga right now doesn't. When he joined the club, he thought he was joining a club where he would come in with his compatriot, Alexander Isak. And I tell you what, if some of those crosses and pullbacks today, if Isak had been on the pitch, 1 or 2 of them might have been goals. So that's why I'm concerned for Anthony Elanga, not for him himself in terms of his own ability and what he is doing, but he needs to be part of an attacking unit. And Anthony Gordon at centre forward isn't really the answer for any winger. Gordon does okay. Gordon does his best in that role. He's busy. I think he can play it. I think he's Newcastle's best option right now through the middle. But I don't think that's great news for Harvey Barnes on one side. Less so Harvey Barnes, because he's a player who more exists within himself and scores goals rather than creates them from that side. But Elanga on the right, I think he could be a creator. I think he could be a Jacob Murphy type if there was someone there to put the ball in the back of the net. And there's not right now. And the danger is Elanga goes into the new season as a winger without a centre forward, and he does have a run where the team aren't scoring and everyone's looking at the £55 million new addition in the attacking lineup and asking questions of him. That's why I'm concerned. So I would just ask people to bear that in mind. Tell me what you think about that below the line, what you thought of his performance today. I thought part of it were eye-catching, and yes, if you took it on face value, part of it you were left asking, well, what comes at the end of that? Where's the goal? Where's the assist? Where's the chance created? I think there's something there to work with. I like him. I saw him out in Asia, in training, in matches. So far, I've been quite taken with him. I just don't necessarily see how Newcastle get the best out of him right now. I'm yet to be convinced of that. And I think you guys probably will be too if you're watching the team at the moment. They've got those 3 fluid wingers, and I said before the match, didn't I, last night, that I was quite excited to see them. Well, I thought they were dangerous. I thought there was endeavour. I thought there was pace. Tick, tick, tick. Did they really look like scoring? No, they didn't on the whole, and it was another game with a blank. Now, there was a good spell before half-time where Joe Linton could have had 4 goals. A few well-worked set pieces, a couple of balls in, a couple of headers, chances in and around the box. Now, Eddie Howe did joke afterwards, he is not going to reinvent Joe Linton back as a centre forward. He wants him in the midfield playing to his strengths, and I think that's wise. That would be the ultimate turnaround. Centre forward to midfielder, and then Eddie turns him back into the player Newcastle thought they were signing 5 years ago. He'll stay in the midfield. It will be Anthony Gordon who plays through the middle if, as expected, that injury scare comes to nothing. What else was there from today's game? Well, I'm loath to return judgment because Newcastle's 11. Next week we'll have 2 new centre-halves in. We'll have Bruno Guimaraes back in the midfield, of course, so it will be different. And we haven't seen Eddie Howe's best 11 in pre-season so far this season. But I will say this, certainly in the second half, Atletico Madrid, and there's no real shame in this, I don't suppose, but they looked the better team. They did look better than Newcastle, certainly created more chances, had better finishers on the pitch. I mean, Julian Alvarez and Antoine Griezmann, that probably goes without saying. Newcastle don't have that, but they need to have that. Come on, it's okay saying they don't have that. We've got better players, and I've just said that. But they need to. Atletico Madrid's a Champions League team. Newcastle are a Champions League team. They need to do something about it. You can write these games off and say, it doesn't matter, only matters at Aston Villa next week. But that today was probably informative to me. They're going into a Champions League campaign and looking at the ability of the players in Atletico Madrid's team, and certainly the goal threat that they had, I would say it's greater than Newcastle. They need to address that. They know they need to address that. I'm stating the obvious, but sometimes the obvious needs to be reiterated and stated. How badly that team, I worry now going into the season in terms of the ability to score goals. I'm not sure there's goals in that side. I don't, and that's no criticism of the individuals. It's a no criticism of anyone. It's a statement of fact at what they don't have, and which is in part a byproduct of this Alexander Isak situation that for me now, should I run back around the steps? I'm talking about Isak again. And for me now, needs resolution quick. And if that means Newcastle bringing in the players to facilitate that sale, it's got to happen because Eddie spoke well tonight. He really did. He's faced up to this for so long now, and it's got to the point where a reporter should never apologise for asking a question, I don't think, because it is news. It's probably why a lot of you guys are tuning into this video, but it has got to the point because we've got that good relationship with him where some are saying, I'm sorry to ask about it again. And I think that is meant in a sort of good, jovial spirit. But yeah, he spoke well, and he actually ended the press conference really positively where he took it away from Isak and he spoke about the players he's got at the club, very good players. And he said, and he finished on a really strong answer. He said, I've got to find a way of these players who I love coaching, who I love working with, he's got to find a way of protecting them and changing the noise and changing the narrative. He said, through no fault of their own, through no fault of the players, there is this negative noise, was what Eddie said, around them right now. They've got to flip that. He said they've got to come together. They've got to unite, which is why Alexander Isak isn't there. You can't be Newcastle United if you've got a player who doesn't want to be at the club. And while that remains the case, that is why I believe, not 100%, but percent based on percentages, that Isak will go. They will try to do that deal and get in the replacements. But Eddie finished strongly, and he finished on a positive note, and he finished on the front foot. He is taking back control of this, and going into the start of the season next week down in Aston Villa, he wants it to be about him. He wants it to be about Sandro Tonali, who was good today, about Bruno Guimaraes, who's had a good pre-season, Joe Linton, who looks strong. That front three, who, while I've got my concerns, are three very good players that might just click when it becomes competitive. Players do go to another level. Anthony Gordon, very good pre-season, and fingers crossed he's okay, but he's got another level in him again when that competitive action starts. He's got that aggression and that hunger about him. The defence actually looks okay. Dan Burn, Fabian Schär, Kieran Trippier, Tino Livramento. That'll be the back four next week. I can name the 11 now with Nick Pope behind that front three, those three in midfield. And that's a good team. That's a very good team. All is not lost, far from it. And if Howe comes in and there's progress on Wissa, then one of those strikers, it can flip, it can change. That's the point that he was making. It's what I've said previously too. So while again you start this video in the press conference afterwards and all the questions are about Alexander Isak to the backdrop of another defeat, it does feel negative. It can change. I want to bring you news that it is going to change. So stay logged on. We're nearly there, guys. The blue star is in sight. Those were happy days watching Newcastle with them and had the blue star on the front of the kit. What they do for some of those players from that era now. A certain front two for Colin Beardsley certainly would not go amiss. So yeah, right, I'm heading into the Trent. For those of you who don't live in these parts, for those of you who used to, and for even those of you who do, there's no harm in seeing it. Come on, we'll cross the road and I'll give you a little look in the door. Hope it's open. Oh, this would be bad news. Shutters are down. It's a big moment, this. My immediate happiness rests on this. It's quiet, but it's serving beer. It's got some football on the television. So there you go. Like, comment, subscribe, everything else. Tell me what you think of what I've said below the line there. Going back to Isak at the top. Everything's still open, still so much to play on this story. But tonight, for the first time, I thought publicly, Eddie Howe give that little indication that if he doesn't want to be here, he doesn't want him around. Read those quotes. I'll put the link in the description. Okay, guys, thank you so much for watching. Here we go. Good night. Bye-bye.